Magic Rings and Laser Beams is a Grimax Studio production created by sci-fi and fantasy fans for sci-fi and fantasy fans. Your host is Ben Sherman, a scriptwriter and voice talent for Fare and History, a longtime gamer and reader, and has been writing fantasy literature for the past 10 years. He's also known by his very silly username, Poohead189. In this podcast, he interviews popular authors of the science fiction and fantasy genres and speaks on writing, gaming, and movies. You can support this podcast by going to patreon.com/poohead189. Welcome, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Magic Rings and Laser Beams. It has been a while over the... Oh fuck, I lost connection to the game. I'm playing Total War Warhammer 2 right now, and I love playing multiplayer and fighting people online, because that's my jam, and I'm pretty competitive when it comes to that shit. But it has been a while since we've had an episode. Holidays... working all the time. I need to restart this game. I work for FedEx as my day job, which you likely know, and that means that over Christmas time things are crazy. But now it's currently January 22nd, and this episode will probably be out the 23rd. Yeah, things have slowed down, thankfully. I actually managed to have a small break today, which is nice. But let's get on to news for fantasy and science fiction. When it comes to fantasy, best thing to start with is the Witcher series. No doubt you've seen it already, and if you haven't, you really should. Came out almost exactly a month ago. It was December 20th, and I remember I binged it the first 3 days, got through all 8 episodes, and each episode is about an hour long, and not an hour long as in like a 40-minute long Game of Thrones episode. I mean like an hour long without commercials. So each episode was pretty beefy. I think the longest one was like 72 or something, 73 minutes. And honestly, really fucking good. They got a few things wrong, and I made a review on it if you want to go check that out, and I'll put a link in the description below. And it is a spoiler-free review, in case you haven't seen it. But I go into what is good and what is bad for it. So if you want to listen to that, go ahead and click it. And this isn't exactly science fiction and fantasy, but I've heard that if you enjoyed Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the Quentin Tarantino movie of last year, still relatively new, that Tarantino either is thinking about or is going to write and direct 5-episode miniseries of Bounty Law, and Bounty Law being the fictional show that Leonardo DiCaprio's character Rick Dalton, it's the show that he's famous for in the movie. So he might actually make a series of that, which will be really fucking neat. And wait, let's see if I get any unspecified errors when it comes to this shit now. And nice, it's working. Also like to apologize because I'm a little rusty after not doing this for a month, or probably 2. I think it's 2 months by now. Today I'm going to be talking to Phillip Anthans, or Phil, and he's worked on Forgotten Realms novels, but what he's mostly known for is editing and writing books on how to write fantasy and science fiction, and that is obviously something that a lot of my listeners would be very interested in. And let's also go to the science fiction, maybe not news, but recent science fiction works, and that would be The Mandalorian. Really fucking good show, dude. Like, it's just... I made 3 episodes on the... or 3 reviews in the first 3 episodes, but after that, like, the show kind of ran together in a more linear storyline. It wasn't as standalone as each episode was. Even like the middle 3 episodes were kind of... I wanted to make a review called The Companions, because the 3 episodes in the middle were him finding new people to work with. But yeah, really great show. Jon Favreau hit it out of the park. Bill Burr's great in it, in his episode. Pedro Pascal, really cool. Really good as a Mandalorian. And you can tell, and this is a really good show because the actors and directors and writers are passionate about Star Wars. Very much unlike the sequel movies. But yeah, great show. Absolutely love it. And what faction is this that I'm fighting now? No. Oh, great, I'm fighting 2 high elves. Whew, boy. I wonder if I should be orcs. I just beat a lizardmen army with my dwarfs. And I'm dwarfs here, and I might want to beat elves with dwarfs too, but like, I don't know. I think I'll be the Green Tide. Grimgo Ionod. Yeah, I've played Total War Warhammer for years, but it's only been like the last month that I've really gotten into it competitively. I mean, I've played a bunch of campaigns, and I've played against people online a few times, but like, I've played every day since like January 2nd or 3rd against other people, consecutively, and I'm addicted to it, honestly, and doing pretty good so far as well. Obviously, I've lost a few times, but hey, I'm hanging in there with my shit, and I just started using the green skins for stuff too, so that works out for me. I wish I could rant about that. Well, let me give you some advice. If you play dwarves, when you play Total War Warhammer 2, Trollhammer torpedoes, the Iron Drake guys, the Trollhammer torpedoes, those guys, they're a lifesaver in almost any situation. People never really think to use them, but they're great against monsters, they're great against cavalry, they're great against people with armor, they're great against single targets, they're good, at least, against multiple targets. They're just good all around. Highly recommend those boys. What's the money? Oh, the funds are just large. I already got a bunch of... Oh, I haven't bought any Black Orcs. Sorry if this is boring. I am trying to... I mean, like, come on. You listen to me. You listen to Warhammer shit. You're gonna end up hearing stuff like this multiple times. So, like, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? What do you fucking expect from me? He said, ladies, are you ready to fight? Alright, so in this game right here, it's Greenskins, me, and a Dark Elf faction named Arse Rapist, which is just beautiful, against 2 High Elf armies. And, you know what, I'm not going to have you listen to me the entire time that I'm playing the game, but I will tell you how it goes if you care. Alright, but let's get to Phil Anthans. Oh, wait. Hold on, wait. Gotta say something else. Go see the new Underwater movie. It was actually called Underwater. And if you enjoy science fiction, you love that fucking movie. And granted, let me tell you right now, you probably haven't even heard of it. And I'm not saying that in a hipster way. I'm saying that, like, you haven't because they haven't really advertised it much. Okay. Now, the Underwater movie. It's about a group of scientists, or no, not scientists. It is an expedition. God, I'm getting this wrong. Okay. In the near future, doesn't specify when, a company, and that honestly, the year 2020 now made it kind of seem futuristic because it came out like as soon as 2020 turned. So, some company, and I forget the company's name, is researching the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of the ocean that we know of, and they set up this facility in the deepest portion of it, 7 miles below the surface. And as they are drilling even deeper, they somehow monsters come up from below the surface of their drilling in, and this is about immediately. Kirsten Dunst is the main character, and she's never been on my radar too much, and I've never seen, and I don't want to see Twilight, but she's a really good actress in this movie. She does really well. I don't want the Twilight thing to stain her. There's a huge clamor and shift, and then parts of the vessel and facility start breaking apart, and she needs to make it out of there with some other survivor. Advertising. I don't even think it had the money to advertise stuff for it at all, really. Which is unfortunate because it's so fucking good. Bro, it's so good, bro. Come on, bro, it's so fucking good, bro. Yeah, it's such a good movie. At least for you science fiction horror movie fans out there, which I know I'm one. I love stuff like Alien and Predator, Alien vs. Predator, Prometheus. Shit like that, bro. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. I wanted to see it just to be like, well, let's try something new. And honestly, I wouldn't have heard about it if I wasn't already Googling horror movies, horror science fiction, just to watch on my computer. And I didn't find any that I remember, but I know I found that movie that just came out, and I'm like, oh shit, never even heard of this. But yeah, really fucking good. Highly recommend it. And now, guys, the long-awaited interview, Phil Anthans. Hello everyone, and now we're back to the section of the podcast where I interview a special guest, and this guest today is definitely noteworthy. Phillip Anthans is an author, an editor, and a known authority on the genres of science fiction and fantasy, but I won't say too much. Phil, can you introduce yourself to the audience in a bit more detail for those who don't know who you are?
Sure. Hi, I'm Phil. You can call me Phil. But I wrote under, my full name, Phillip Anthans.
Yeah.
I worked for TSR and then Wizards of the Coast for about 15 years. Mm-hmm. I was the senior managing editor at the end of my time there for book publishing, and spent most of the time there as the Forgotten Realms novel line editor. So I worked with Ari Salvatore and Ed Greenwood and Paul Kemp and everybody on the Forgotten Realms side.
Okay.
And then, before that, even a few books with in Dragonlance and Birthright and Planescape, all sorts of stuff. And since then, I left there in 2010. Since then, I've been really a freelance editor working with some, bigger publishing and corporate clients and doing some story and world building consulting with other companies, including Pixar and a few other sort of bigger studios and so on. Working with indie authors a lot as well, and teaching courses online for Writer's Digest for a long time, and writing books on writing and doing all sorts of stuff like that. and continuing to write my own stuff as we go along.
Oh, okay. I'm a big fan of Forgotten Realms, and I knew that you worked on that, but I didn't know you were you didn't work on Dragonlance or have been working with Pixar. I had no idea about that.
That was. I don't want to over stress that. That was sort of a short little consultation where we talked about some world building stuff, and we talked about sort of fantasy tropes and things like that. But,
right. Okay.
I'm doing an awful lot of work for an awful lot of people, I guess, is the short answer to that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Particularly if you're a freelancer now, you go in a bunch of places. How did you get into the business, or like the writing business? Because obviously you do various things. You don't just write, but
Well, I started writing just like little books, and I kind of make my own little comic books or illustrated books, with crayons, like literally. Like 6 or 7 years old. As soon as I learned how to write, and as soon as I learned how to read, I started sort of making my own little. Anytime I saw a movie or a TV show, I loved Godzilla movies when I was a kid, when they would come on, then I would sort of create my little novelization of it, and try to create my own, characters and little stories and stuff like that. So in terms of writing, and particularly writing science fiction, it was literally as long as I can remember. Okay. I was just a child of the mid-60s and into the 70s, the space race and the space age, and Star Trek and Lost in Space. That was sort of where I lived.
That makes sense.
And then, thanks to Conan comic books and Marvel Comics, got into fantasy through that.
Oh.
Sort of, that door. Because they were always really good about crediting Robert E. Howard and saying this is based on a story by Robert E. Howard, a character by Robert E. Howard. And finally I was like, I gotta go find this Robert E. Howard guy and see what's going with that. And that was it, right? I'm like, well, now I'm hooked into this as well. So the science fiction and fantasy genres are just where I have, and horror, right, have existed my entire life. So I was just always writing, always. And also got into D&D and then other role-playing games pretty early on.
Yeah.
In 1978, I played D&D for the first time.
Okay.
So how I kind of really got into doing this professionally is after college I just started sending a ton of short stories out, was writing poetry too, and then just sort of decided one day to publish my own magazine.
Oh.
Alternative fiction and poetry, and it was a make-up the publishing, magazine publishing business on your own as you go. It was really a, sort of baptism by fire.
Right.
And, that only lasted a couple of years, but it got me really thinking about writing and editing in particular, professionally.
Yeah.
And I sort of squirmed my way into TSR. After doing a bunch of freelance projects for other role-playing game companies. I wrote a bunch of stuff for Traveler and Chill and some other stuff.
Okay. Now I know you've written various Realms novels. I'm a big fan of the Realms, like I said, but I have a few questions on that before we get to your freelance work. First off, I know it was a very long time ago, but how did you end up writing the Baldur's Gate novel?
So it's so long ago, but it just won't go away completely. It was, they started, obviously there was a license for Interplay, which then, brought on BioWare to actually make the game.
Right.
It became sort of a bigger priority at Wizards. And the idea hey, we should publish a book, like some kind of novelization, came from sort of my boss's boss. And by the time that brilliant idea had been hatched, it was like way too late to actually do it. So they put together a kind of an audition process, like where they get, I think it was 5 people, myself and 4 other people. And we put in blind proposals. It didn't, so it didn't have our name on it or anything like that.
Right.
And there was a small committee of other editors and the brand managers and whoever else felt like they had a say in it, the licensing department, everybody. And they just picked mine. And they said, okay, so start writing this. And it was all based on an Excel spreadsheet that had sort of the story mapped out. Maybe a paragraph or less on each of the characters. And that was all we had to go. Now, we should be getting a beta of the game somewhere in between here, but just go. You got to go.
So it was before the game was even out.
Oh, it was. Yeah, there wasn't even a beta.
Wow. Okay, I didn't know that.
So, yeah, they were. And there was just some weird stuff. There was like a communication bottleneck that stuff had to. I couldn't really talk directly to anyone at BioWare. They couldn't talk to me. They couldn't talk to my editor. It was weird. It was not set up properly. So they couldn't really see what I was doing. I had no idea what they were doing other than this is the story document that was approved. So I said, well, okay, I guess that's what I'm going, basing all this off of. And that was like Halloween or like the week before Halloween. And I had to have a finished first draft before Christmas.
Okay.
So it was not enough time to even think about it, let alone write the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I did. I sat down and just, in very like Pulp Fiction author kind of way, right? I was just channeled L. Ron Hubbard, pre-Scientology L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah.
And just sat down and typed until it was done. And then, because I thought, I'm just going to do the best I can based on this, and someone there will read it and say, here's all the stuff you got wrong, and here's how you fix it. And then that part of the process didn't happen. Someone told my editor that it's fine. It was literally, that was a 2-word, that was all both of the words of feedback I got. It's fine. And he came to me and said, okay, they said it's fine. And I was like, we both know it's not fine. It can't be fine.
Right.
I mean, I've been doing this for long enough to know that you don't just sit down and continuously type something based on this kind of vague outline, and it's fine. Somebody has to tell me something. And so he said, well, I'm going to, obviously do an edit and make sure that it hangs together, at least it's in English, but there's no time left. Because, we had this very long production lead time. We couldn't just, it wasn't, it was, when was it, late 1998, 99.
Yeah, it was 99, I think.
So it wasn't print on demand, it wasn't going into a Kindle that you could just go to the literally last day and then publish it.
Right.
You have to go through this long process of being scheduled at a major printer, and they were going to print like 30,000 copies. It's not something that can just be done in no time at all. Had to go through all the design, cover design, and all that process. So we have to be done in order to get this book out around the same time as the expected release of the game and all that stuff. We had this just series of hard deadlines, and so it was just sort of, I don't know, I guess we're at that deadline, and we're just going to have to go, it's fine, and see what happens. And so that all went through that whole approval process, went off to the printer. And then we got a copy of the game. And my editor sat down and played it, because I was so freaked out by that time. I was like, I don't even want to know. It's going to freak me out.
Yeah.
If it is fine, come back and tell me it's fine, but I'm freaking out. So he played it, and he came back and said, yeah, it's not fine. Not fine. Because also, he couldn't, if you know that game or remember that game at all, the version that we had at that time, obviously, eventually got the full thing. As soon as you got to the friendly arms, it just crashed, and it wouldn't go beyond that. So all I knew was that the character of the sort of little sister or the girl that goes with him, which in the story document was optional, you don't have to bring her with you, now comes with you whether you like it or not. And she's not 9, years old. She's like 20.
Yeah.
And now, actually, a fully functional character that's important to the story of the game. And I was like, well, if we're not fine from literally the very first second, I bet we're not fine for the rest of it. And then, of course, the book, the game came out, people played it, they started, they read the book and just ripped me to shreds.
Yeah, they're like,
It was just like, clearly this author didn't play the game. It's like, yes, he didn't.
Yeah.
He did not play the game. There was no game to play.
Right.
He did not play the game. So, that was rough, because, I'm just kind of sitting there going, and I have to be a good employee and everything and not say, they screwed me,
Yeah.
And in fairness to everyone at BioWare, I don't know if for all I know, somewhere out there, there's a document of, here's the 150 things you did wrong, and here's exactly how to fix it. And it just never got to me.
Right.
So, it's not like they screwed me or somebody did the wrong thing. It just was a lesson learned. Sold like crazy, though, so thank you for everybody who went and bought it. I mean, people were telling me that, I bought that to see if it was really as bad as they say. It's like, well, thanks for loyalty on that test, but, it's just not what you want to hear. So.
I don't own the book myself, but I have a friend that has it, and he said, like, yeah, it's not like the games, but I was wondering, I was curious on it, but yeah.
And I think like anything, I haven't even looked at it in so many years, because I just if you have a career that lasts for any period of time, literally doing anything, right? I think if you're a plumber and you think back to the plumbing job you did 20 years ago, and you don't kind of go like, oh, yeah, I could have done that better or faster and more efficiently with different materials. If you're not thinking that, then you're in trouble, right? If you really think, I just hit the ground running and it's pure gold. Like everything I do is just champion.
Yeah.
I think that's nuts. And certainly for writing or any artistic pursuit, any creative pursuit, if you're not, if you keep doing it, you keep getting better at it. It comes from practice. So, the fact that, I started out with a book that was particularly bad, looking back at it now, it's like, that was me doing the best I could with what I had. And, in that book, I think there are probably scenes that I really still like and that I'll stand by. It's just, I think I did a pretty good job there.
Yeah.
And definitely a couple in Baldur's Gate 2, which I was just kind of talked into doing. No, this time you'll get feedback, and not. That's a whole other story. But there are scenes in Baldur's Gate 2 that I thought I kind of nailed, but I don't know.
At that time,
after a while, there's the book you want people to remember you for. I'm still working on that, to try to find one of those. And then there's the book that sells the best. And then there's the book that you wish could just be stricken from the memory of mankind for all time and resigned to the ash heap of history.
And Baldur's Gate's that for you?
Baldur's Gate would be that book for me.
Did
no
you?
offense to anyone at BioWare or anyone who loved that game or who liked the book. I would get fan mail from little kids that was like the cutest thing you've ever seen in your life. They loved it.
Aww.
People over the age of like 15 just wailed on me.
Gotcha.
So who knows?
Did you did you play Baldur's Gate 2 before you wrote the second one?
It had to be exactly the same production schedule because we were so far ahead. And they were tweaking things and fixing things and closing bugs and stuff right up to the end.
Okay.
Even back in the day when it was, games were on CDs and stuff.
Yeah.
We just had a production cycle that just didn't really didn't account for that, but there was better communication, so they said, okay, so this is the story document, and it's going to be the same, right? We're going to realize we have a better idea, this didn't work, we're going to cut this whole thing out and replace it with something else, for all of the various different reasons that I don't know anything about, right? So just do this, send it to us, and we'll send it back. And this time they did, and they said, ooh, we kind of changed the whole villain. We really radically changed the entire book. Radically changed it.
Huh.
And that was for, an expansion on the original game, too. It wasn't...
Right. I think Shadows of Amn, I think.
Yeah. And so there was a little bit of negotiation where, they... what the hell? They paid me some money to do the extra work again. To basically rewrite the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so I think it's, and I've heard this from other people, that it's much closer to the game, because there are also elements to the first Baldur's Gate that weren't in my book because they weren't in that. The main character, whoever the character was that you were playing, would have these sort of prescient dreams that would carry the story along. Mm-hmm. I didn't know anything about that. It's not in Baldur's Gate. So that was the kind of stuff that was added and worked into the second one. But it was still not something that, they had a complete build of the game that I could play all the way through.
Right.
So, to this day, I still just, I can't even imagine playing those. They just freak me out.
Gotcha. No, I completely understand. Let's see. I think it's a happy coincidence that I've already interviewed two other authors that have worked on the Spider Queen series.
Okay.
Talked to Richard Baker and Richard Lee Byers, and it wasn't until right before this interview I was like, oh yes, you wrote Annihilation. How did, and that was the second to last one in the series, I think. How did you come by that project, and how did you handle the established characters? So hopefully it was better than the Baldur's Gate series, but...
Yeah, I know. So that was the hardest I ever worked, maybe in my entire life up until then.
Really?
Up until then. And I am immensely proud of the way that all turned out. And it was, and not just because it was kind of, my moment in the sun or anything like that, but because it was so collaborative. It was, Bob Salvatore looking at reading everything, really being hands-on with everything. And these great, the other five authors were just amazing, and everybody sort of took each other's direction, and nobody blew it up, nobody could have screwed it up.
Right, yeah.
Which it could have been so easy to do. And then I can literally everybody just hit their mark. Matt Annisberger, who's our art director, those cover designs were just perfect. If you line the books up on your shelf, they just, they create this kind of cohesive look. How do you ask for a better cover artist than Brown? It was just like everything was all good. And I was the series editor. It was kind of the initial idea came from me. And then they're like, well, we want you to write one of these, and there's a certain amount of, was that, is it weird if I step out of the editor chair? And Bob Salvatore was like, oh no, you're getting an editor, you're getting an edit.
Right, yeah.
It was his chance to kind of put me, to flip chairs on me, which was great. He was amazing. And, so yeah, but the original idea for that actually came about with, we had started doing a series of Greyhawk novels that were really novelizations of those great old, the original old D&D modules.
Right.
Descent into the depths of the earth and against the giants and stuff. And we were going to do that as a series, and the first author kind of fell out and was replaced by a different author who took it in a radically different direction. But there was supposed to be a third book that was Vault of the Drow. And if you remember that, you have to be like a gamer of a certain age to even know anything about that.
Right, yeah.
At the end of Vault of the Drow, you go and fight Wall. And I thought, yeah, and you're kind of supposed to kill her. And I thought, well, if we're going to publish that book, it has to have an ending, and the ending would be you kill her. So I thought it would be cool, and this was sort of in the waning days of Planescape, where all the worlds were connected.
Yeah.
So you know, move from Forgotten Realms into Dragonlance and so on. And I thought, well, if we kill her in Greyhawk, she's dead everywhere, right? That was kind of the original assumption. So then, now we have in Forgotten Realms this whole giant drow society that we've seen so much from Salvatore and Owen Cunningham in particular, that this would be a big deal if all of a sudden Lolth is dead. And so that was the idea. Let's tell that story. Let's tell this giant epic tale of a theocracy, because that's what Menzo Barenson really is.
Yes.
Sort of drow society in general is this matriarchal theocracy. And the theocracy is based on this goddess who now all of a sudden disappears. And so, you know, of course, in D&D mechanics, if the god is gone, where do you get your spells from if you're a cleric? And everybody, everybody in charge of everything is a cleric of Lolth. So if she's gone, the whole thing starts to disintegrate. And so that was the initial idea. But then as we were sort of, you know, kind of tossing around that concept, third edition then sort of cut that Planescape cord and said, no, they're not connected. So that would, and then of course the Greyhawk books kind of fizzled out, and we didn't even do that Vault of the Drow book. And so that idea kind of sat for a second. And then I said, well, what if we just did it anyway? You know?
Yeah.
And just sort of made it a story where she isn't dead, she just kind of, she disappears. And then the story is, you know, go find her. And that just felt like a good core of the story. People like that idea.
And didn't that kind of connect with the Time of Troubles?
Sort of, yeah. So Forgotten Realms back then had kind of established itself as a place where, you know, the gods were kind of much more like, you know, sort of Greek mythology, right? They would actually appear and move around and walk around and do stuff and have kids with humans and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, you know, the Time of Troubles was really, how do we kind of blow stuff up so that we can get from first edition to second edition, get rid of all the satanic stuff and things that are getting us in trouble.
Yeah.
You know, so it actually ended up being sort of, you know, Lolth is a goddess that everybody really liked, and this was part of a big core story that really had a lot of readers, and that, you know, gamers were really getting on me, sort of, I want to play a drow and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So, like, let's graduate her up from, like, Demon, which is the original first edition kind of castier, to, you know, and then she was a lesser goddess, and it's like, let's graduate her up to greater goddess, let's make the demon wear pits not one of the layers of the abyss, but its own plane. It was sort of part of, let's build a third edition cosmology, you know, do some tweaks to it, and just kind of stir things up and make her, you know, one of the core goddesses, which I think fans in general just sort of assumed she was. And so, you know, even if that whole Greyhawk thing, didn't matter, then it still became, well, then let's just tell the story of her, like, evolving in some way, and the change that, you know, that takes place, and what that does to drow society and so on. So that's where the story morphed into.
Okay. What was your favorite character to write for in that series? You remember?
You know what, it's so hard. That's kind of like, say, because I was so into that. I mean, I was just where I lived for like 2.5 years.
Okay.
It's a little bit like, you know, choosing your favorite kid, you know, which of your kids is really the best. I think the main thing that I loved about it isn't that there was one particular character, but how they all came together. You know, and from the original, we thought, we're going to do this, and we're going to have multiple authors handing off. So we really need to have, you know, something written down, some kind of story Bible that everyone can work from, and we don't have too many code bells. Because some of the authors were working simultaneously, which is rough, right?
Yeah.
You assuming that book 3 is going to end, or it's going to end, and so on.
Yeah, both Richards told me, so.
Yeah, so you have to really be careful about, not just kind of running off on tangents and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so we had set up a meeting, and we flew some people out. Richard E. Byers was there. Mm-hmm. Bob Salvatore was there. Rich Baker was there, obviously, because he worked, at Wizards at the time. Thomas Reed was also there. Mm-hmm. He worked at Wizards. Obviously, I was there, and my boss, Peter Archer, was there, who was also the editor on my book and kind of helped oversee everything from that. He was the managing editor at the time, and so we just sort of, and then a couple of people who came in from the RPG side, because they did, sort of a D&D source book that came out around the same time, or at the end of it. They kind of covered what, kind of the aftermath of that story.
Yeah.
So we just got, interested creative people into the vital creative people into a room and just hashed it out, and filled in, character archetypes really that were just sort of, this is sort of our party, that goes off, that leaves Mental Barons on and goes off in search of what happened to Walt. And from that meeting on, we just sort of started adding layers to it, and there was still a lot of leeway for each individual author to sort of take a piece of that and really think about what part of that story do they really want to focus on. And it just got, like things do like that, it just got huge, and it just got epic in every conceivable way, including the sort of workflow stuff, and still working to a very, very tight schedule. And we just hit it with that one.
It became a hugely popular series, so I understand.
Yeah, it was just, it was so much work, but so worth it. It was really one of my, I'm just the most proud of that, I think, of pretty much anything in my professional career, honestly.
Really?
It's just something that, because I just have such great memories of how collaborative a project that was. And sometimes editing it's a two-person relationship, right? It's the editor and the author, and you kind of work on this book, and it's like, yeah, this is great. This was really fun. But this just went on and on for so long. It became such an overwhelming process, but always good. Everybody was always positive. Nobody was fighting with each other. It wasn't, or at least nobody expressed to me any sort of feeling that, I kind of got the crappy book, I don't want this one.
Right.
There was no sort of wasted fluff in there at all. There was just always something for somebody to grab onto.
That does sound like it be, yeah.
It was just great to work with Bob Salvatore in that capacity as well. It was just all good.
Have you worked with him before?
Oh yeah, so I was his editor at Wizards of the Coast when he had kind of left the fold in TSR for all sorts of dumb, reasons. Mm-hmm. And just before really, I started working there, a little bit before I started working there in '95. And then we sort of brought back into things when we became part of Wizards of the Coast in '97. And so I was his editor starting with The Silent Blade.
Okay,
and then the last book I worked on when I was actually there, I think, was Control Grim.
Oh, that was around 2010 or 11.
Yeah, so that was real. Really, and then I did sort of worked on a couple of the last 3 that he wrote for Wizards as a freelancer, but by then I was kind of really out of the loop in terms of, where things were going with 5th edition and Forgotten Realms in general and stuff like that. So, but yeah, we worked together on really a lot of books from Silent Blade onward. And then, the sort of repackage of The Legend of Dritz, so that, putting things in chronological order and stuff like that.
Yeah. That is a lot of books between Silent Blade and Gauntled.
Yeah.
Goes through the Obold War and a bunch of stuff like
Mhm.
that. So I'm sorry, I've just read a bunch of his books too. But let's see. I also have a copy of, I think it's right here. I should have had it right in front of me. The Last Mythal Anthology.
Realms of the Elves.
Yes, exactly. It says you edited all of this as well, and I wanted to... Did you... Let's see. You wrote the second story in there.
I did. So normally I wouldn't sort of write a story in a book one of those anthologies that I edited, but that story was actually originally written for the Neverwinter Nights anthology, that first Neverwinter Nights game.
Oh.
But that anthology never happened.
Okay.
For all sorts of dumb reasons, whatever. But it was canceled.
I was about to ask, because I was like, if there's an anthology out there called that, then I'd like to read it. But
yeah. And that was the thing that was sort of sold out there. Like, there was a cover design and everything. It was in catalogs and it was on schedules, and then it was just pulled kind of last minute. Actually, really last minute. It was like done. Like, all those stories were edited and finished. And the story that I wrote just happened to feature elves. And so I talked to Peter Archer, and he's like, yeah, go ahead and put it in there since it's already done. It's already been edited by, I think it was him, or a freelancer, I don't remember. But, so that story was originally written as the kind of the origin story of that magic item, the Staff of Elmaxian, that then you would find in Neverwinter Nights, but it didn't. The whole thing kind of unraveled. A couple other stories from that anthology ended up, the Neverwinter Nights anthology ended up in some of the other ones.
I was about to ask where the other stories went.
Yeah, the only one I remember for sure is the story by Ed Boney that ended up in Realms of the Dragons, one of the 2 Realms of the Dragons anthologies.
Okay.
That was actually a really cool story. And I'm sure at least one more of the other ones was somewhere, but this memory escapes me. That was a while ago.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's get to your more freelance work. I've actually owned a copy of Writing Fantasy and Science Fiction. That book for about 8 years now, and in it you wrote a section about the current state of the genres, for obviously meaning science fiction and fantasy for those listening. Let's speak about that a bit. Do you think the climate for the genres has changed since you wrote that around 9-10 years ago?
Sure. There's always, everything is, I guess, to some degree or another, is trend-driven. There's trends that happen. So, there was the post-Harry Potter, it was give me more and more kids go to wizard school. How do we knock this off and get a piece of this giant pie? And, then there was a sort of huge run of vampire romances, a huge run of, dystopian futures featuring a girl with an unusual weapon. And you can kind of immediately trace back to the progenitors of all those things.
Yeah, definitely.
And, things kind of come in and out, right? There was urban fantasy, or sort of contemporary fantasy was all the rage. The kind of Dresden Solid stuff. And that sort of ended all of a sudden. So, you never really know exactly what the next thing is going to be. And, the advice I've always given to authors is don't try. or don't think, hey, people are really reading, whatever it is, the Hunger Games, when that was huge. I'm going to write my own version of that, right, to be on trend.
Right.
By the time you finish writing that, and by the time you start shopping it around to agents and stuff, that has been, that earth has been scorched.
Yeah, it won't be popular anymore.
There are either books that they think are similar enough to it already in their, in their slush piles, that they quickly get them out, or they hire a guy like me who just ghostwrites it really quick. And
right.
And they just sort of start throwing those knockoffs out. And I'm happy to say I don't actually do that on a regular basis. But
yeah.
If you see a book that's already a huge bestseller and you think I'm going to kind of do my version of that and it'll sell just as much as that, no, too late.
Right.
Just way too late. And you always have to keep in mind that all these people came out of nowhere. Who is J.K. Rowling?
Yeah, of course.
Be the person who starts the trend, not the person who follows the trend.
Yeah,
So in those terms, where is the science fiction genre now? I think it had gone through that period of, people read The Martian and were kind of excited by the idea of hard science fiction all of a sudden. Was this, like that was new.
Yeah.
wasn't Astounding magazine in the 40s, but there it was. And I think now though I'm really still waiting for science fiction publishing to kind of catch up with science fiction movies, and somehow there's this disconnect between almost all of the highest grossing movies in any given year are science fiction.
Yeah.
And I definitely include the Marvel movies in that. And yet we don't really see the same, trend going on in publishing, where science fiction has kind of got its audience, and we're kind of waiting for that. Maybe there's going to be a breakout book like The Martian, but probably not,
Do you think fantasy sort of beats science fiction a little bit in the novel business?
Yeah, generally it does, and it has been for a long time. So just sales-wise, when you look at the publishing business, and this has been true for a really long time, is there's kind of three genres, and it's romance, mystery / thriller, but really more thrillers now.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of, Alex Cross kind of Lee Child stuff, right?
Yeah.
And fantasy, which continues to sell. And again, fantasy in a very broad spectrum.
Yes.
It can be, epic fantasy. It can be
sword and sorcery, classic fantasy. Yeah.
Kind of anything. But there's always a market for it. There's always people who read it. There's people who read it religiously, thankfully. You're talking to one of those people right now.
Me too, yeah.
So it's, I think, in the last several years, romance has kind of climbed to the top of those, and the other two will sort of fight for their piece of it. But, I don't think you can ever go wrong just writing fantasy right now. Science fiction, just be prepared for a smaller audience who still loves it and deserves to have good science fiction, but it's a smaller piece of the pie, I think.
True. Do you think that writing, how would I say? I hate using the word Tolkien-esque fantasy because I'm a big Tolkien fan, like I'm a big Forgotten Realms fan, and I can see clear differences between them. But, the ones with the elves, the dwarves, the dragons, do you think that's sort of do you think that market's kind of been, well, I don't want to say saturated, but it's kind of been, how do I put this? D&D has sort of taken it and moved it to a different section, and now, if anyone who writes that, it's just like, oh, we've seen this before.
Right.
Kind of thing.
No, I don't know. So I've split fantasy into really three bigger groups or subgenres, and I talked about this in my own book, The Guide to Writing Fantasy and Science Fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And these are my definitions, right, that may not be shared by anybody, but this is sort of the way I feel like you can break fantasy down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's either epic fantasy, which is definitely Lord of the Rings, right? That's the gold standard of epic fantasy. And that is really the hero, and you're sort of asking, what is the hero's plan there, right? What's the hero's responsibility?
Mm-hmm.
And in epic fantasy, it's, I have to save the world.
Yeah.
And then high fantasy can have the same gigantic world building, like Forgotten Realms is an enormously complex
Oh, yeah.
and hyper detailed, gigantic world. But I call that high fantasy because really the hero is trying to save the kingdom.
Yeah.
Right? It's a story about I need to save 10 towns, or I need to save Mithril Hall, or I need to save Cormyr, right? Not the whole world.
Not all of Middle-earth, right.
Yeah. And then there's Sword and Sorcery, which is I have to save myself. It's like literally Conan.
Yeah, Conan-esque, yeah.
You know, this wizard is trying to kill me for some reason, and I just need to. And once I chop his head off, then the story's over. But he really doesn't. Even when he becomes king, he doesn't necessarily care about any of the sort of the state of the world, or the sweeping tides of history. It's just I'm gonna get out of this jam I'm in. So I think all of those approaches to fantasy are out there simultaneously, and you never know which one is gonna raise its head. Because I think a case could be made that Game of Thrones or that whole Song of Ice and Fire series really fits more into the high fantasy category.
Yeah, I think so.
There are big sort of we need to save the world from the White Walkers kind of character arcs. It still tends to be about we're fighting for control over the Seven Kingdoms.
Yeah.
And it's kind of more like I'm trying to save the kingdom. And there is a sense that there's a bigger world out there that people on Essos kind of don't know anything about these White Walkers and like what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And then I think there's always Sword and Sorcery out there that people are, people are reading Joe Abercrombie and authors like that, right? That are much more, I think there's always space for, this is just fun.
Yeah, true.
And, I think a lot of what you see in D&D is definitely that.
Oh, yeah. And speaking of Game of Thrones, I felt there was a big disconnect with how the how the series wanted to be and how people perceived it. Sort of like most of the people who I knew kind of cared more about the high fantasy aspect than the epic fantasy part, and and I remember I would say a lot of times, like, look, Cersei Lannister's seductions are not going to stop the White Walkers, but what they cared about was the Iron Throne, and they kind of just stuck with it. So I think you're right. I think it would stick more with high fantasy, even if it had this epic fantasy feel to it. But
and that's the thing too. And I don't think as either an author or if you're a gamer or whatever you're doing, I don't think you necessarily have to take those are my definitions anyway. And you don't have to say, well, Phil said that when my original idea was high fantasy, and so now I can't introduce some element where they have to, that might, be a threat to some, the world or to some bigger set of people. Mm-hmm. Do whatever you want. That's not, you don't have to cleave to that in any particular way. I think it's just sort of helpful to think, approach-wise. I think what it is really you have the freedom to go either way. It does not have to be the One Ring. It doesn't have to be, if we fail, the world will descend into a 1,000 years of darkness. Mm-hmm. It can just be, the story of a thief in a city who is, run afoul of the Thieves Guild or whatever, which is a lot of what, for instance, Forgotten Realms books were.
Yes, definitely.
Where a character somewhere who is wrapped up in an adventure in some place, and 30 miles away, they've never heard of this person or care about anything. It's just the world moves right on along. And a lot of the stories were very contained, and even from a D&D standpoint, it was like, here's this kind of fourth level guy doing his thing. It wasn't the saviors of the world. And I think it was in the War of the Spider Queen that it got the most epic for Forgotten Realms, but even then, there is the assumption that you're, the king of Cornwall, you don't have any idea that any of that is happening.
Yeah, no.
It does not ever register to you that this goddess has gone silent, that you wouldn't go anywhere near if you could help it.
Yeah.
You just don't know that that's going down at all.
Even with, I think Richard Baker's, I can't believe I forgot the name. The reason why I can't believe is because it's right in front of me. The Last Mythal series, it's the whole movement of the elves and the whole, and two or three elven sub races like changing, and it's still, people in the Silver Marches don't hear about it.
They're just great.
Yeah.
And that was part of that one in particular. Was some changes had been made to the third edition Forgotten Realms campaign setting.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of to line it up with third edition, and then in some cases I think it was just somebody had a really cool idea and just kind of made a change to the world.
Yeah.
So, it was kind of, we either try to pretend that didn't happen, or that it did, or it's always been that way, or something kind of goofy like that. I thought, no, this is great. This is an opportunity to now tell the story of why the elves are just a little tick different.
Yeah.
In third edition. So that was sort of, okay, Rich, can you do that? Just take them from second to third edition and go, right? You know where the beginning is and you know where the end is, so make that a really cool story. And he did just a fabulous job.
Oh, yeah.
Unbelievably good on that.
Oh, yeah, I spent like about a month reading all of it so I can interview him, and I absolutely loved it. But what was I going to say? Do you still think that, how do I put this? Is young adult still pretty big when it comes to...
Yeah. I mean, it kind of is. It's so locked in now because, just sort of as a category, the publishing loves it, and I think there's a certain level of gatekeeper that kind of adult fiction, and I need a better word for that because that just sounds like porn.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What adult fiction doesn't have, which is, teachers and librarians and parents. So, I kind of honestly don't get book recommendations from my 83-year-old mother. I mean, if she said, like, hey, this book is awesome, you should read it, maybe I would. But kids tend to get, like, parent-approved stuff, teacher-approved stuff, what the school librarian is going to buy in to what the English teacher is going to assign, and it kind of starts from there. And then, other kids will talk to each other in a kind of, I don't know, maybe more passionate way or less guarded way than grown-ups can sometimes do, especially now in the kind of Amazon Goodreads review universe. It's, everybody's trying to be serious and be a critic, but it's hard. Not a lot of people are ready to just say, like, this is awesome. This is really awesome. But, 9-year-old kids will totally do that.
Oh, yeah.
And they'll just, like if they get something that they love, and 12, 13-year-old kids who read the Hunger Games are like, this is the greatest thing ever. This is so cool. And, parents then start reading it and so on. And that's the thing, Harry Potter in particular, definitely the Hunger Games, definitely Twilight. Those weren't just read by kids. I think if it was, and it's kind of impossible to say exactly, what that demographic was.
Yeah, the exact audience.
It wouldn't surprise me that in particular Hunger Games was probably read by more adults than it was read by kids, wherever you put that line, like 16, as something like that. I've seen myself, grown women in their 40s reading Hunger Games, reading Twilight, and I know personally a bunch of people who were, well past their, school days,
yeah,
who read Harry Potter. So, those things weirdly tend to age forward. So, adults will start to go like, oh, I heard that Hunger Games was really good. Oh, really? I wish we had books like that when I was a kid, kind of thing.
Right.
But it's exceedingly rare that you're going to see, like, a 10-year-old who's just diving headfirst into Game of Thrones.
Oh, yeah.
Or Tolkien that, can't, or Lord of the Rings anyway, that, kind of has a older language of kind of a more literary tone to it and so on.
I was
opposed to Twilight.
I definitely wanted your take on it, because I was kind of one of those weird kids that kind of read stuff like Warhammer novels and The Thousand Orcs when I was 12, and I never actually got into young adult. And it surprised me when I got older that I checked and I was like, well, everyone's reading this. I mean, I knew everyone was reading Harry Potter, but, but...
Yeah.
I was just...
So, I think now, to get into that young adult category, I think really all you need is a young protagonist. But as long as you're, with a few exceptions, right?
Yeah.
But as long as you're the hero of the story is, 17.
Mm-hmm.
It will be sold as a YA novel.
Really?
And I think that's actually, and when I talk to authors about that, I'm like, be prepared for that, and it's a good thing, right? If you can sell this as a YA fantasy, that's better right now than as an adult fantasy. There's a marketplace for it.
You're exactly right, because I interviewed William King, who's written a lot, but he's written mostly in Warhammer Fantasy, or a lot of the ones that I've read, and he wrote, I think, 12 books on this dark fantasy universe, and then he wrote 3 more books in the same universe with a 15-year-old protagonist, and they sold a lot more.
Right.
And he was aghast at the sales that he was getting, because he was freelance by that point, and and I still need to read those for my next interview with him, but apparently they sell like crazy now.
Yeah, I think it's just, I think it just is that. It's a category that's a little bit better curated, and there's a little bit more of a buzz around it. Mm-hmm. You have to, I think, especially in genre fiction, you have to do something real. Your book has to be successful before people start talking about it, which is incredibly weird and difficult, impossible to manage on your own. But a YA book can be kind of sold into. Like they'll go to the ALA conferences, the American Library Association conferences. They'll go directly to teachers and key librarians like Nancy Pearl and just claw and scrape for any decent review in library journal, and that will generate interest and buzz. Where in a sort of adult fantasy or science fiction book has to hit some fan network that starts talking about it.
Yeah,
there isn't really anybody out there interviewing it. The New York Review of Books doesn't care.
No. Yeah.
Well, they don't care about YA fantasy either, but Library Journal does.
That might be why the King Killer Chronicles has gotten really big too. Just because the protagonist is so young in that, or the way he tells the story. But let's see. Something else I wanted to ask, and obviously this hits close to home because I'm writing a novella now, but I've noticed that novels are obviously have their place in the bookstores, and short stories they have their niche in magazines, but where do you think novellas get, where do you think that they're usually sold with, or what's their market?
So thanks to Tor.com, which is kind of weird that they did that, right? Tor has been for years and years one of the major science fiction and fantasy imprints. And their website started publishing short fiction, and now they've started to release novellas in like actual printed paper book form, and obviously ebooks too.
Right.
And I've read a few of them and they're fantastic. The Murders of Molly Southbourne by Tate Thompson, really, really, really good. So there is actually now, weirdly, for the first time in literally as long as I've been alive, a marketplace out there for novellas, for genre novellas that went beyond the sort of one a month that they would print in something like Analog or the magazine of fantasy and science fiction, but were sort of where that category lived. And then, of course, the whole indie world, I think, is really receptive to that. I think that's really what you should be writing and selling for $2.99 on Kindle, not a full-length novel. And I think that there are people out there who are, reading on a Kindle or reading on the Kindle app or some, other phone app, and they're kind of not registering that in the same way that you walk into a bookstore and there'd be this one book right there, it's like a huge fat thing, and then this little skinny kind of pamphlet, and you're looking at those and thinking, ooh, one has greater value than the other. Right? In the ebook world, it's just, I read that, it had this great beginning, middle, and end, and it was a fantastic story. And I think people care less and less about how many pages it has, because if you're reading an ebook, it doesn't have pages really. You can make, the type bigger and so on. Mm-hmm. So, I think now if you're ever going to sell a novella, right, you should write your story in whatever length it turns out to be. Don't try to pad it into a novella or cut it down to a novella. But this is the time, surprise, surprise, that there's a marketplace and an audience out there for it. I think that's great, because I've always been a fan of shorter books. Mm-hmm. I tend to be a slow reader when I'm sort of reading for pleasure, and can sometimes get kind of like, I don't know, did I really want to adopt the Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell lifestyle for like the next year? And I did, and it was amazing. It's one of my favorite fantasy books of all time. I'm not saying I don't read long books, but I think twice a little bit before I do, and I think that there's again some misconception in fantasy in particular that they have to be gigantic. Right. I've actually had people say, well, I wrote this fantasy novel, but I didn't get it up to the 200,000 word mark, and so no one's going to read it, right? I'm like, that's way longer than you think it is.
That's silly,
There's not a lot of books out there that are actually going to be that long. And it's certainly not, and there's no rule that says if it's fantasy, it has to be long. I mean, it's just goofy. It's not backed up by anything like sales figures or, reviews or what people actually are buying and reading and liking.
I think people just think that because of Game of Thrones and Brandon Sanderson novels, probably.
Yeah, there have been some high-profile and successful, really big fantasies, and that's great. I've read a bunch of them myself that were, fabulous. And again, this isn't me saying don't do that, but don't try to pad. Write the story that you want to tell, and if it's this big, giant epic, then fantastic. If it's 80,000 words, that's all the 80,000. That's all the words you need. That's your story.
Yeah. I think 80,000 is about 300 pages anyway, so that's about a novel length. Yeah, and
the rule when I first started with TSR was, everything was so hyper templated, and that was one of the first things that we were able to get away from when we got to Wizards of the Coast. But it was every book we published was a paperback or mass market paperback original. Mm-hmm. They liked 320 pages. Financially, it was the size of book that was, in this kind of sweet spot of it's long enough that it has shelf presence. It's not just like this skinny thing that gets lost, but it's not so huge that it costs a lot of money to produce. Yeah, and costs a lot of money to ship, because a box of 24 books that are 800 pages are, is twice as heavy as 24 books with 400 pages.
Yeah.
welcome to the business behind the business. And, so they were like 320 pages, and it was about 90,000 words. So if it got to be, and, sort of plus or minus 10% from that. So, if it started to get to the 100,000 word mark, we were in trouble and had to cut stuff. And then if it was really under, 85,000 really, it was, that's going to look, right, we're excited to get into large print edition kind of stuff. So yeah, I think the majority, definitely of science fiction readers, most of the books that you've ever read that you really loved and that are classics of the genre are probably in that, 75 to 95,000 word range.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that with anthologies. And how did you, or why did you start going freelance? Or how did you stop working on Realms novels?
So, yeah, things started changing kind of not in necessarily a positive way at Wizards. And we got to remember, too, that there was a giant global economic depression.
Yes.
It happened. That was rough. And with 4th edition sort of released right into the teeth of that, it was just a period of contraction for the company. So I'll say I was happily laid off.
Okay.
It was definitely time for me to move on from there. Like I think I had done the best I could with what I had there, and I'm very proud. And again, my time at Wizards of the Coast in particular, and TSR too. TSR had a whole basket of weird challenges that I walked into very recently. But Wizards of the Coast, like 99.9% awesome. Like, just pinch me that I even do this for a living. Like, this is crazy that I have this job.
Yeah.
Because I went in as a pure fanboy, like just from the get-go. Like, really played. What I did in high school was play D&D and go to like slasher movies with my friends. That was it. Like, I just played D&D all the time. It was just what I did. And, a little bit through college, then kind of, got out of it for like a year or somewhere in there, and then, came out of college and started to sort of working retail jobs and writing, doing freelance writing and trying to sort of publish that little magazine and stuff. And, slipped right back into D&D with the same people I played with in high school, and just like 2 times a week at least play D&D Travel or whatever. And so that job came up and it was like, wow, man, really? Like, really? It was very, very cool.
God, I would have, if I kind of wish I was older so I could have worked at with Wizards of the Coast in 2nd and 3rd edition, because those are my favorite editions.
Yeah.
Let's see. Now, I should have asked Richard Baker this, but I did not. And you probably don't know because you probably left before it happened, but do you know why Forgotten Realms stopped publishing books?
I have no idea.
Really?
I have no idea. There were, when I left or was laid off, it was clear that they did that because they were just gonna, dramatically cut down the whole publishing business. Mm-hmm. And I left, and then like immediately after, one of the other editors just quit completely and just left, and then one of the other editors who worked for me was told, well, we're going to move you over to the game side, to the D&D side, and she just said no. And they're like, well, then you're going to have to be laid off. She's like, okay, lay me off then. And so it was like, that was kind of the mood there,
right?
And they kept going with a couple of the people who were there, and and really did their best, but just one line after another was just canceled, and books were falling off the schedule, and the art director saw the writing on the wall, and he switched over to the Magic team, and then finally there was only one person left, and she went over to work on the website, and it was just over. And that was it. And that was all in that time, and that kind of run up to 5th edition.
Okay.
Exactly what happened literally a second after I walked out of the building in June of 2010, it's anybody's guess.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. And you left then and you started to do mostly editing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's really what I do, and it's sort of what I know how to do. Mm-hmm. And of course, and again, it's 2010, so it's not like there's jobs out there.
Yeah.
It was, just fun for yourself out there in the world. And because obviously Wizards of the Coast wasn't the only, publishing company that got, hit by Borders was a huge national bookstore chain one day and then gone the next, and the publishing business really went through the first time really since the Great Depression that they got hit by anything. It's always been a very recession-proof business, but when you put it together with the rise of the internet, it was not good times.
Gotcha.
For the publishing business at all, right during that 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12. Mm-hmm. And then it kind of, crept back to, I think we're going to almost be okay territory into the teens. And, so that actually ended up being a good time to be a freelancer because nobody was hiring staff positions to do anything.
Yeah.
And more publishing companies were sort of expecting books to be edited before they got them, because they just don't want to have a staff of people that are going to shepherd books all the way through. And then, of course, the unprecedented rise in indie publishing just made it so that I could do what I do without, the corporate master.
Mm-hmm. Tell us a bit about the business that you have now, your website and.
Sure. So if you want to find me, it's AnthansAssociates.com.
I'll put the link in the description
below. If I could do it over, I would choose a shorter URL. But it's ATHANS Associates.com.
I'll put a link for people to get it.
Okay. And so I do all sorts of stuff, but really it falls into two categories. Either you have written a book and you need an editor. Send me the whole thing, right? There's a sort of 3 cents per word flat rate, and then I do the edit, send it back to you, we talk about it, we figure it out, you do those revisions and send it back to me, and I know right so many years into doing this that I can make that book better, but I also try, really, and what any good editor should be doing, is making you a better writer in the process.
Right.
So it isn't just, I moved all your commas around and there were 3 spelling errors, and so thanks, give me the money. It's really learn why I made these changes, right? Why is this better? Why is this not working? And that kind of stuff. And I really hope that clients that I work with are actually. I love it when people ask me or challenge me, on an edit, like, why did you change this? Why did you take out all of my semicolons? It's like, okay, you got me started. Like, let's go. But,
yeah.
Like, I really want them to understand, what's going on there, right? So that when you start your next book, you'll have learned from all that process, and so that edit should be, I'm going to definitely help you make this book so that it's publishable if you want to go the indie route, and a lot of people I work with do. So it goes more or less from me directly onto CreateSpace or Kindle Direct or both. And that's great, right? Or it goes out into the world to try to find an agent and so on. But then the next book that you write, I hope, right, you're learning from that edit and you've become an incrementally at least better writer as you really should be. Like we talked about, right? If you're not a better plumber 20 years into your plumbing career, you're doing something wrong.
Right.
If you're not a better writer on book 2 than you were on book 1, then you need to rethink. And even now, I think you're going to do that on your own, but with a little bit of help that says, there's so many kind of rookie mistakes that people make, and they have no idea. Like, what? Oh, I didn't know that. Like, okay. And that's my job, right? Now you do. And, of course, all of that, under the umbrella of, it's not my book, it's your book. So this isn't me rewriting you and going like, I know you hate this ending, but I like it better, so it's too bad. To publish it. That's never, right? It's never at all. So it's, again, everything is trying to be as collaborative as we can and say, like, if you see an edit that I've made, everything is done on Word with track changes on, you can see every change that I've made. If you like it better the other way, just reject that and get on with it, right? Make sure that you love your own book, because if you don't love it, then you can't expect that anybody else will.
Yeah, then why write it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you do that, and you also...
That, and then also do sort of longer-term consultations where, really I'm kind of your writing coach. So that, there are people who just have availability to meet, right? And in some cases we have regular calls where we'll just meet every couple weeks or something like that. And I'm kind of with you during the writing process and with you during the self-publishing process and doing all that kind of stuff along, just to help and to be a sounding board and to read things as you go along. And then there's, of course, all the teaching and stuff like that I do. And some ghostwriting as well, but is the stuff that you'll never know I did. Because a good ghost never reveals himself.
True. Do, what was it? Do you, wow, I had it in my head and then it disappeared as soon as I was about to ask it. I hate it when that happens. Let me think. Do you ever help anybody with, or do you know anything about marketing indie works?
A little bit. I tend to, that's where I kind of shy away a little bit, because it's still such a make it up as you go along industry that almost it's kind of cringy to even use that word. The indie publishing world is, I think there's a lot of people doing it who are convinced they know what they're doing, that there's a way to do this. They're usually wrong, which is kind of hard to, and now there's a bunch of people listening to this going like, you're crazy, I know exactly what I'm doing. Right. And then people who just think, well, I put it out there, and how come I only sold like 2? And I know one of them is my cousin Fred. Why isn't it selling? And, it's kind of hard to tell people, well, because it's now one of like 40 million books that Amazon has on there. And, like, it's there, it's got the same landing page that, Stephen King has, but people search for him.
Yeah.
Nobody knows that you're there, right? And I think there are some indie authors who just go, I'm just doing this because for the love of the game, and I hope that I sell some, but I just want to say I wrote this and it's out there. And I applaud those people. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Right? That's art for art's sake, and that should never be dismissed. It shouldn't all be about the commerce.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have to be ready for, well, I've got, it's been out for 5 years and I've got lifetime to date sales of like 14. Literally will be numbers like that. But I think for the real serious indie authors, approach it not as, I wrote this book, everybody come and see. It's, I'm now starting a small business, right? This is a small press publisher. And if you run it like a business, your chances of success increase dramatically. And I think that's what a lot of people aren't really prepared for, which means you're going to have to pay. You're going to have to pay people like me. You're going to have to pay a cover artist, designer. You're going to have to really put out the right product. And then you're going to have to spend some money drawing some attention to it. And the fact is, though, that I think the overwhelming majority of the potential readership out there, whether that's, the bucket of fantasy fans or science fiction fans, horror fans, etc., don't care anymore, or never really cared at all, who the publisher is.
Right.
I don't know that there are people, and when people say, like, oh, I read Wizards of the Coast books all the time, I love the TSR books and stuff, you love Forgotten Realms, you love Dragonlance, right? It could be published by anybody, you love that world, or you love R.A. Salvatore, you don't love Wizards of the Coast or TSR or whoever is publishing that now. But, it's not like, well, I only read Del Rey books. Nobody does that. Nobody says that. So if you've got this great fantasy novel, there's no readership out there saying, like, no, that wasn't published by a, imprint of Penguin Random House, so I'm not buying it.
Yeah.
If it looks interesting where their friends are saying, oh, you should totally read that, they'll buy it. But again, it still has to be visible to some number of people. And then you have to be out there, you got to be ready to sell it. And that's very uncomfortable for a lot of authors who tend to be kind of introverted.
Right.
And, when I say stuff like, you have to start now with a social media presence that it goes way beyond, like, my cat did this really funny thing this morning. Or, like, here's today's report of my mom's cancer treatments or something.
Right.
You got to really, like, you have to approach Twitter and Facebook and all those things as, this is my infomercial space, mostly, or partly at least. And then we'll fill it in with some positive, happy things about the genre, positive, happy things about other authors and books. Never be the person who's writing one-side reviews of anything on Goodreads. And this can be hard for people. It's like, now I feel like I'm turning into a salesman. Mm-hmm. And the answer is way better, because it's not you who. and that's what a publisher, and I would still tell everybody, if you give it a try, the traditional publishing business a try first, because that's what a publisher brings to the table.
Yeah.
And, yes, it's true that if you self-publish yourself, you're going to get a bigger royalty, essentially. You're going to get a bigger piece of each book sold. But 70% of 150 books is not great, as opposed to, 10% of 15,000. So, and that's what you're never going to just be able to conjure up on your own. You're not going to get a meeting with the science fiction fantasy buyer at Barnes & Noble. Not because they're mean and they hate people, or they hate indie publishing or whatever. It's just they would literally have to have like 1 million meetings.
Yeah.
Every year, 3 times a year, and it's impossible. So, that's what a publisher does, right? The rep from Tor sits down 3 times a year with Barnes & Noble and says, this is what we've got. And they order for a national bookstore chain. You're never going to be able to do that on your own.
Yeah, no.
You just don't do that. And they're also going to pay for placement, right? And so, like, when you walk into a bookstore and there's that table in the front, that's for sale territory. That wasn't just the people at the store thought this book looked cool.
Right.
That's a substantial amount of money has changed hands to put that book on that table for this exact amount of time. And, memos are sent out to those stores saying, okay, on Tuesday, put these books in this order. Like, this one only paid for the bottom shelf, this one paid for the top. And again, if you just had that on print on demand from CreateSpace, you're never in that conversation. So it's just you're kind of already way behind in terms of kind of competing for the attention of. So that just means, again, the more you can make it a business and take it seriously in terms of investing in the time, right? This has to be more like your full-time job and things like that. Then I've seen people, and I work with people, pretty consistently who have done really, really well on their own out there. But it's hard. It's not just if you build it, they will come.
Right, yeah. Well,
that sounded terribly grim to me.
No.
I never do it. It's all just terrible.
No, it's...
You're doomed to fail. It's not. You're not. It's just be ready to work.
It's something that people need to hear, especially people who want to indie publish. Even authors that have become really big names in other places, and then they try to indie sell, and it's not what they thought.
Yeah, and I've heard some, and I think this is particularly terrible advice from a few of the kind of maybe science fiction authors in particular, who then say never ever work with a traditional publisher again. They all suck, and they just take your, and you make way more, bigger royalties to doing it yourself. Mm-hmm. And most of those people, when I look at that, is, well, yeah, but you had years of Ace and Del Rey and Tor helping you to create that,
the image that they have,
the reputation and the body of work that you're now putting out on your own.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a big difference between I'm moving my career in this direction, which I think a lot of mid-list authors kind of had to do, is that starting to become harder and harder to sustain for, I don't know what you call it, Republican ravaged publishing business.
Yeah.
Post-Republican America. Whatever, that, so, that made sense for a lot of people like that.
Right.
But they didn't try it from zero. And I think they would have a very different experience.
Oh yeah, definitely.
If they didn't already have, sort of a catalog that they could put up there all at once, and a name, that said, oh, I know who you are. I've read some of your books. And notice how I did that with really trying hard not to actually name names. But, but they're out there and they know who they are. Don't just be careful with, sort of the advice that you give to people who aren't exactly in the same
boat as
yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, that's all the questions and time that I have today. But
that was a lot.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that I still have it after taking a break for a month or two.